The coffee mug I'd left on the left side of the sink was sitting on the right side when I came back downstairs. And I know how that sounds, but I live alone. And living alone means you notice things because there's no one else to blame. I stood in the kitchen doorway, running through every possible explanation. Then I put it back on the left side and went to bed, telling myself I'd misremembered. 2 days later, a container of leftover pasta I'd been saving was gone from the fridge. Not moved, not eaten by me in a haze I'd forgotten, simply gone. I emptied every shelf, checked the trash, walked every room. That night, I started checking the locks before bed in a way I hadn't bothered to before, testing each one twice, pressing my palm flat against the front door to feel if it was firm. I began leaving tests, a strip of tape across the pantry door at knee height, a pen placed diagonally across my desk, one corner of the bathroom rug folded back exactly 1 inch. By the third morning, the tape was snapped clean through, and the pen had been laid parallel to the desk edge, moved and then tidied, the way you tidy something out of habit, without thinking, because you've been doing it somewhere long enough that the habits just run. Someone had corrected their own mistake in the dark. That night, something shifted in the wall directly behind my headboard. Not the random knock of pipes, not the groan of a settling house, but the slow, careful sound of weight redistributing. A person trying hard to be still and not quite managing it. I turned off the light and pressed my ear against the drywall and listened until the sound stopped. Then I pressed harder, and something on the other side of the wall pressed back. I reached for my phone and found it dead on the nightstand, fully drained, not on the charger it had been on when I fell asleep. I got up, went for the front door, and found the chain lock thrown. I never use the chain lock. It's mounted too high, and I always forget it's there. But someone had crossed the darkened living room and drawn it silently closed while I slept. I was locked inside my own house by something that understood how exits worked and had quietly sealed mine. I found the door in the basement behind a shelving unit I'd never thought to move. 4 feet tall, built directly into the foundation wall, standing open by 2 inches. I shone my phone light through the gap before the battery gave out completely, and saw a narrow corridor running the full length of the house, just wide enough for a person to sit in. At the far end, a man sat on a folded blanket, staring directly back at me, hands in his lap, posture relaxed, face completely still. He looked at me the way someone looks at a thing they've been watching for a very long time and have already made peace with. He moved the second I did. I heard him hit the low door frame and come through it as I reached the basement stairs. And he was fast, in a way that had nothing to do with the stillness I'd just seen. Deliberate, practiced, covering ground in a way that felt like he'd run this particular route in his head. I took the stairs in 3 steps, and he was at the bottom by the time I reached the top. The footsteps behind me were measured, unhurried. The footsteps of a man navigating a space he knew better than I did. I hit the front door and wrenched the chain free with both hands. I ran to my neighbor's house in bare feet and kept hammering until the lights came on. Police found the corridor exactly as I'd described. A narrow, livable passage beneath the house, furnished with a sleeping bag, a battery lantern, a stack of food containers lined neatly against the wall. They found additional access points I hadn't known existed. A panel behind the water heater, a ceiling hatch above the laundry room. They searched the property for 3 hours. They did not find the man. That was 8 months ago. I moved to a different city, a high-floor apartment, no basement, no crawl space beneath anything. Last week I came home from work to find a container of leftovers sitting on my kitchen counter. I hadn't made leftovers. I stood in my new kitchen and stared at it for a long time before I dialed. Police searched the apartment and found nothing. But the chain lock, the one that came with the unit, the one I had never once used, was thrown when they arrived. I was almost asleep when I heard the hallway window unlatch, that specific metallic tick of an old pivot lock releasing. And I lay completely still in the dark for 3 full seconds before I moved. I hadn't opened that window. I check it every night before bed because the frame swells in the cold and the latch is weak. And I had checked it. The hallway was empty. The window was standing open 4 inches, letting in cold air and the sound of the street. I closed it, tested the latch twice, went back to bed. I was nearly under again when I became aware of breathing that was not mine. Slow and even, coming from somewhere between the foot of the bed and the door, from somewhere inside the room with me. I turned on the lamp. The room was empty, but the closet door, which I always sleep with closed, always, out of a habit I've carried since childhood, was open by 3 inches, and the breathing had stopped at the exact moment I touched the lamp switch, with a precision that felt chosen. I sat up and stared at that gap for a full count of 30. Then I kept the lamp on and called a friend, kept them on the line, kept my voice level. While I talked, I moved slowly around the room, and that's when I saw my laundry basket had been shifted from its corner to just behind the bedroom door, wedged at an angle that would prevent the door from swinging fully open. Someone had arranged it from inside the closet, reaching out through the gap in the dark. Someone had been thinking ahead. I tried to step into the hallway and the bedroom door wouldn't move. Something wedged under it from the outside, while I had been standing inside this same room. 2 access points, both now blocked. I had been contained. My phone dropped to 1 bar, then the call cut. I stood in the center of my bedroom and understood that I had been observed, tracked, and quietly boxed in by someone who had waited out my entire bedtime routine without making a sound. I pulled the closet door open in one motion and drove the flashlight directly into the space. A woman stood at the very back wall, tall, dressed dark, arms at her sides, completely motionless. She did not flinch when the light hit her face. She didn't gasp, didn't lunge, didn't speak. She just blinked once, slowly. The blink of someone who is not startled because they have known exactly where you were this entire time. She came forward fast. I didn't go for the blocked door. I went straight for the hallway window I'd shut earlier and got it open and pushed through it before my body had a clear plan. My hands caught the porch overhang, slipped on wet shingles, and I dropped into the front bushes and hit the ground with enough force to knock the air out of me. I heard the window slide back up above me, and I did not look up. I got to my feet and ran down the front path and kept running. My neighbor called the police. Officers searched the house and found the wedge under my bedroom door. A piece of cardboard, folded tightly, cut to an exact fit. Not improvised, prepared. They found the closet. They found the unlatched hallway window with its compromised lock. The woman was not there. They checked the attic access, the space under the porch, the rear fence line. She had cleared the property in the window between me dropping from the overhang and the first unit arriving. and she had left almost no trace. 3 weeks later, I was settled in a new place across the city. My friend, the one I'd called that night, whose number is unlisted, texted me to say a woman had knocked on her front door, asking for me by name, citing my old street as a reference. My friend had never shared my address anywhere. She described the woman as tall, dark clothing, very calm, very still. The woman had left without another word the moment my friend said she didn't know where I'd gone. I changed my number and moved it to a new account shortly after that. Some nights I convince myself the distance is enough. That stillness I saw in that closet doorway belongs to another city, another version of my life I've successfully left behind. Other nights, I sleep with every light in the apartment on and the closet door open, because I've learned it's worse not to be able to see inside. Three rhythmic knocks from below the kitchen floor stopped me cold at 9:30 on a Tuesday night. Not random, not mechanical, but evenly spaced and deliberate, like a signal, like something checking whether I was still there. I live in a ground floor unit, and there is a crawl space below the kitchen, a narrow dirt floor void I have never once thought about. I set my glass down very carefully and did not move. The knocking didn't repeat. I made tea and moved to the couch and talked myself through every rational explanation. Pipes, a trapped animal, the building settling. I almost believed it. Then the knocking started again, this time tracking from the far side of the kitchen toward the center, moving in the direction I had moved, following me through the floor. I got on my hands and knees and pressed my ear flat against the linoleum and listened. The breathing below was slow and controlled. Inhale, long pause, exhale. Not panicked, not animal, not random. Patient. I straightened up and looked at the small square access hatch set into the back of the pantry floor and did not touch it for a full 5 minutes, because some part of me already understood that whatever was down there had been down there long enough to develop patience. I opened the hatch. The crawl space dropped 4 feet and stretched into darkness. I shone my phone light in and found the usual tangle of pipes and insulation. And then I found the drag marks in the dirt. Wide, recent, running from the far end of the space toward the middle. The disturbed earth hadn't resettled yet. Something heavy had moved through there, not once but many times, wearing a path into the dirt floor like a habit. I called out into the darkness. The breathing stopped immediately. Then, from the far end of the crawl space, the section that ran directly under my bedroom, I heard a metallic click. The secondary access hatch on that end, the one flush with my bedroom floor that I had never given a second thought, unlatched from the inside and swung up by an inch. Someone knew this layout better than I did. Someone had just positioned themselves between me and my bedroom. I pointed my flashlight at the far hatch and held it there. A man's face rose slowly into view, pale, wide-eyed, skin caked with dirt so thick and layered it had dried and cracked along his jaw. He stared at me from across the length of the crawl space without blinking, one hand gripping the edge of the hatch, knuckles light. He'd been under there long enough for the grime to stratify. Then he pulled himself up through the far hatch and stood up inside my bedroom, and I heard his weight settle through the ceiling directly above my head. His footsteps moved through the ceiling. 1 step, 2, slow and unhurried, toward the hallway. I scrambled back through the pantry hatch, cleared the kitchen, and hit the front door running. He was already stepping out of the hallway into the living room as I got the deadbolt open, walking, not running, covering the length of the apartment without urgency. And in the 3 seconds before I cleared the porch, he had nearly crossed the entire room. I ran 2 full blocks before I stopped. I found a gas station and stayed until the police arrived. They went through the crawl space and found a sleeping bag, several water bottles, a charged battery pack with a coiled cable beside it. They told me the bedroom end hatch had clearly served as a primary entry. The dirt around it was compressed and smooth from repeated use, probably at night, probably while I slept. They swept the building and the surrounding area. They did not find the man, and they could not identify any exterior entry point that corresponded with recent use. I went back 2 days later with an officer to collect my things. He cleared every room and confirmed both crawlspace hatches were closed and flush. I was in the bedroom packing a box when I looked down and saw the bedroom side hatch standing open by ½ an inch. It had been closed when the officer checked it 20 minutes ago. He was in the kitchen. Whatever was under that floor had come back through some entrance they hadn't found, and it hadn't made a sound doing it. I set the box down and walked out the front door, and I never went back for the rest of my things. Some losses you just take.